In September 1955, we were living on the sea in St. Lawrence in an old board and shingle upstairs house. On the afternoon of September 21st, my brother, Ian, and I was in the sea with my father and a neighbor, Shirley Atwell. The sea was dead calm and glassy, like a mirror to the horizon, with not even a ripple, and no wind at all. I remember hearing my father say to Mr. Atwell, "Shirley boy, something brewing." At about 3 a.m. when the siren at the Worthing police station went off, we knew what he meant. It was a haunting howl that was repeated for several hours. Then the telephone started ringing with friends exchanging information on the approaching hurricane. The U.S. Weather Bureau in San Juan and Piarco said the hurricane would pass north of Barbados, but by daybreak, Mr. Reese at Three Houses, an experienced amateur weatherman, sent out his warning by telephone to friends and rediffusion that because the wind at Three Houses was holding steady from the north, the hurricane would pass close south of the island if not over it. This was crucial information which proved to be correct as the eye passed 6 miles south. At home, Dad told us what to do, and we started to board up the house, nailing shut window shutters and doors, and our mother got busy cooking and making general preparations including collecting water and filling lanterns with kerosene. Dad went to town early to look after shutting up his workplace and to attend the funeral of a friend which was scheduled for the 22nd but was brought forward to early morning. We continued our preparations at home and began to notice swells coming in, and the sea seemed to have lifted up. By the time Dad got back home about 9 a.m. the swells were huge and high up the cliff and reflecting back out to sea. He took one look at the sea and said that we had to get out of there, like now. He phoned his brother, Bob, who lived in a solidly built house with a hipped roof in Cott Road, Rockley, to say we were coming. We packed everything we would need into a Morris Minor car including 2 adults, 2 boys, 7 and 9, and a child of 3, Robin, plus 2 dogs and a cat, and set off for Rockley. We had left very late because the wind was already gusting from the north, causing tree branches to thrash around. The road was deserted. As we passed the junction of Rendezvous Road and Worthing, a very tall coconut tree fell down across the road, about 30 yards behind the car. Had we been 15 seconds later we would either have been hit or blocked. We reached Westerly without further incident and quickly got into the safety of the house. The cat disappeared. There were many people in the house, including the 5 Gills, 3 elderly Edgehill aunts, 5 of us, 6 Westerly Edgehills, and 3 or 4 house helpers and their families, so maybe 28 or 30 people. My father and his brother were very kind but careful in letting us children see what was happening. At first, we sat on some steps facing north between 2 walls and watched galvanized sheets flying past like paper. The air was full of stuff, especially leaves and shingles, and trees were being blown down. So much happening at the same time, and above all the howling, whistling and roaring of the wind. I do not remember any lull and do not remember much rain. I do remember the wind changing direction into the east-southeast because we were allowed to crawl out onto the east veranda and watch a house, 3 houses east of Westerly, getting stripped of all its roof. The galvanized sheets would start to ripple at the ridge, then suddenly, they were airborne and passing north of us. By then, almost all trees were down, and all the poles and wires too. Everything was on the ground. By about 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., the wind had died down enough to venture outside, and what a sight it was. Everything was wrong, and it took a while to figure out where you were and what was going on. Nothing was where it should be, and how would we ever get this mess cleared and return life to normal? My father and Mr. Rex Gill left to walk to St. Lawrence to check on their houses. We boys went down to the road near the eastern end of Rockley Beach to try to help some men, the Atkinson brothers, the Worms, and Evelyns, who were pulling boats out of the surf. There was no beach, and the huge waves were breaking close to the road and spreading across it. The sea water was brown and foamy and itched like the Judgment Day. The itching made us retreat back to Westerly, but there was nothing that would stop it, and we suffered through a sleepless night later. Sometime after dark, Dad and Rex Gill arrived back very badly scratched up by the jungle that was the road a few hours earlier, but relieved that both houses were damaged but intact. After a sleepless night, pitch black apart from the odd lantern in the background or distance, with loose galvanized sheets banging in the wind all night, we resumed exploring and looking at the damage done. We also helped to clear stuff from the roads as best we could and pile along the side of the road. I do not remember exactly how long we were at West Orley, maybe 2 or 3 days, before the roads were clear enough to go back home to St. Lawrence. When we got there, it was clear that the house was more badly damaged than Dad at first thought. Despite having looped shutters over all windows, every single pane of glass was broken, and everything was soddened with salt water. Some of the galvanized sheets had blown off the roof on the seaside, and even shingles were missing. There was only one room that was habitable, so we all slept there for many nights. We walked around looking at the damage up and down St. Lawrence Gap and drank endless coconut water as all the trees were down. Everybody in the St. Lawrence area had suffered some damage, more or less. The St. Lawrence Hotel, next door to us, lost most of its roof, and the owner, Peter Morgan, put up a sign saying they had air-conditioned rooms. Very gradually, the house got cleaned up, and Dad was able to get 1 or 2 carpenters from St. Peter, which had not suffered much damage, and they started repairing the roof. The roads were, at last, passable, but still with huge piles of everything on the side of the road. There was no electricity or telephone, and no school for about 2 or 3 weeks. Every day I cleaned the lanterns, trimmed the wicks, and filled them with kerosene for the night. Sometimes we got big blocks of ice, which were kept in a wooden box. I remember the man who delivered the ice cut small blocks from bigger blocks of ice with just an ice pick to fit exactly in our ice box, all done by eye, no measuring. When school started, we did homework by the light from the lanterns until December, when we finally got back our electricity supply. By then the house had been repaired enough to be livable again, and the landscape began to look familiar again, except for all the missing trees. Once school started, there was much less time to think about Janet, but I will never forget it. It remains as vivid in my memory today as it was on September 22, 1955.
I beg you hard, Janet, not Trinidad. Hey Janet, I beg you hard, Janet, do not Trinidad. You blow down the whole of Grenada. Same pay the Barbadian suffer, and every day we read the evening news. Enough to me, a man jump out the shoes. Janet hide in the mountain. Janet licked down 1,000,000 building. Janet's sister was Katie. Janet blow away the whole of Miami. They had a misprint, they published there, they said Janet had silky hair, about 6 foot. The paper stayed September the 28th, when Janet visit Grenada. She blow down the place like a pasture, and every day the monkey paper their Katie will move Janet from the area. Janet hide in the mountain. Janet licked down 1,000,000 building. Janet's sister was Katie. Janet blow away the whole of Miami. I was afraid, so help me when Janet raid. She blow down a concrete wall and it fall down on the town hall. When Janet start to ramagie, if you see how Vincentian break away, and every day the monkey paper their Katie will move Janet from the area. Janet hide in the mountain. Janet licked down 1,000,000 building. Janet's sister was Katie. Janet blow away the whole of Miami. Lord have mercy, women and children were left to roam. Janet destroyed their home, that was their only companion. And so they died from starvation, may their souls departed rest in peace. Thank heavens this Janet business ceased. She died in the mountain and leave them repairing house and kitchen. Janet's sister was Katie. Janet blow away the whole of my